Getting a great mix is what we're all striving for in our home studios. And over the years, I've come across 5 of the biggest mistakes to avoid, and I want to share those with you today. So, mistake number 1 is recording too hot. Now, we all learned about gain staging, and a long time ago, I got some really bad advice. The advice was have your performer perform the loudest that they possibly will for the recording session and set your gain knob there, right under where the LED is turning red, making sure it's not clipping. Okay, not clipping, that's good advice. But I did this in a recording session years ago. I was working with my brother. We were recording some hymns, and I said, sing as loud as you're going to sing so I can set the levels. He sang loud, I set the levels, moved it up to right where it was clipping, and then backed it off a little bit, and I said, good, we're good to go, hit record, let's sing. He starts singing, emotions are involved, obviously it's music. So I'm sitting there riding the gain knob, oh crap, that's red, nah, okay, too soft, oh, no, too much. Don't do that. That's not fun. Gone are the days where we have to ride the gain knob or we have to ride faders in the recording world because everything was analog gear. Technology has afforded us to be able to record at conservative levels and bring that volume back up if we need to in the mix for things and not have to worry about any sort of noise floor that is going to cause, artifacts or anything like that in the mix. So don't record too hot. It's not going to help you in the long run. Mistake number 2 is skipping the balance mix. Now, balance mix I've talked about before. Essentially, you have everything recorded, everything's up in your DAW, and you're ready to start mixing. What's the first thing you want to do? First thing you want to do is grab a bunch of plugins and throw them on and start making everything sound awesome. But that's not the right step. The balance mix, we're not going to touch any plugins. You're not allowed. Just don't even think about it. Close that little screen on your window. Don't worry about it because we're going to look at volume and we're going to look at panning. You have some guitars, some are going to be left and right. Pan them left and right. You have your drum set, you have your overheads, pan them left and right. Room mics, left and right. Toms, pan them left, middle, right. Do what you need to do to set the tracks where they're going to sit in the mix and then start working on volumes. If you did record a little too hot, then maybe go in and adjust the gain inside your DAW. Bring it down a little bit. We're looking for balance. We're not looking for things to be jockeying for position. We want a good balanced mix. Now, one thing I will say is vocals. Personally, I tend to save the vocals for last, and so in the balance mix, I don't even listen to vocals. But if you want to, and I have before, I do break my rule a little bit. Now for that, I will take an EQ and put them on the vocals and just do a high pass filter, just so I can get the mud and the low end that we're never going to use anyway. Just get that out of the mix to start so you can listen to the full song in context if you're going to be listening to the vocals with it. You don't have to, but if you want to, I would definitely recommend putting a high pass filter on your vocals so you're cutting out all that low end and you're not creating other problems that necessarily won't be there in the mixing phase, but you might, mess yourself up thinking about those in the process. Mistake number 3, using too many plugins. Plugins are really fun. Plugins are great. Without plugins, it would be hard to do everything that we can do in the studio, but using too many of them can be detrimental. And I say that because using so many plugins slammed on, one track or 2 tracks or all tracks gets things really, really over processed, and it doesn't sound natural. It doesn't sound right. It's not pleasing to the ear. Now, you can go in and use specific plugins in specific areas. that will enhance the sound of your tracks, enhance the sound of the recordings. But I will say, if you're using a ton of plugins to try to fix something in the mix, then I would recommend going back and re-recording whatever you're trying to fix, because we want to make sure that we get it right the first time and not have to spend hours trying to fix it in the mix when a lot of times it's not actually possible. Mistake number 4 is not EQing reverbs. Sticking in plugin world, reverb is probably my favorite tool in the arsenal of the home studio or any studio, really. Now, reverbs, I've always say they cover a multitude of sins. You can get a great reverb and make things stand out, or sit back in the mix and just make things shine, and they're awesome and they're lush and lovely. But lush can cause some issues sometimes, because reverbs are going to build up. It's so many trails of sound happening all at once that there's a lot of low end and low mid buildup that can happen in reverbs. Now, I use 3 specific reverbs. They're my 3 favorite ones that I rarely deviate from. You know, my plate reverb is massive and just cosmic. It's crazy, and too much of it can be way too much, and you know, a little bit goes a long way, but it's got a lot of buildup. Even my spring reverb that I use, even though it's more metallic sounding and a little sharper of a reverb, I still EQ this as well. Now, what do I mean by EQ your reverb? Throw a high pass filter on there. You know, sometimes I'll even put a high cut as well, just depending on what sound we're going for, what feel we're going for in the song, because we don't want a bunch of brittle highs coming through in the trails. We don't want a bunch of mud and just low end rumble that doesn't need to be there, causing issues for other things in the mix. So EQ your reverbs. Make sure that you're getting the goodness that a reverb has instead of the problems that could come with them. Mistake number 5 is staying in solo for too long. I've been known to do this in the past. I get the whole mix set up, and like I've said, I tend to stick vocals last in the mixing process, so I have everything balanced. I've got the mix sounding great for the band, and then I jump to vocals and I solo the vocal and I start listening and trying to hear nuance and what I can do with the tracks that I have. Now, that's great, but I'm now listening to the vocal out of context of the rest of the song, which is not great. So we want to keep in mind that the vocal isn't just a vocal, but it's an instrument in the song itself. So if we take that instrument out, it's not going to really matter much what we do to it, because once we put it back, those changes could be null and void. They could have been useless. You can take your electric guitars and solo those out and make them rich and full and beefy and just like, that's the tone that I want. And then you put them back in the mix and it's extremely muddy. It's too much rumble happening. Man, this one's really brittle. Like, you have to listen in context. So if I'm going to solo something, limit myself. Essentially, like, I have an internal timer for things where I try to get out of it within like 20 seconds if I can. You know, sometimes if you're trying to hear a specific frequency that you know that track is causing, I get it, sure, but try to limit solo as much as possible, because when you do, you're taking yourself out of the song and nothing is going to make exact sense in that time frame until you get back into the song, and then you have your reference for everything. Bonus tip number 6. Yay! Use reference tracks. Now, I just said we want to keep the reference of the song, but have you ever used reference tracks? Now, if you don't even know what a reference track is, if you use Studio One, I have a mix template that I've put together, which if you go to floodwaterstudios.com/template, I will send that to you right now for free. You can download that, get that set up in Studio One. And in the mix template, you'll see how I have everything set up for a mixing session. And in that, I have one track that says reference track. Now, a reference track is any other song that you enjoy you can drop it in there and kind of go back and forth with your mix and the reference track, whether you're going for a certain vibe or you're going for a certain sound. We're not trying to rip off anybody else's song. Of course not. Just kind of tweaking some creativity, using what has already been done, already successful, because your favorite artists are your favorite artists for a reason. So use their knowledge, use what has been successful for them, and put it towards your music as well. Again, not plagiarizing music, but take that snare sound, see if you can get that too. Take that guitar tone, see if you can get that too. That's what the reference tracks are for, and I highly recommend using them. I love reference tracks. Hope you guys have enjoyed this video today. You can take these 6 mixing mistakes and avoid these at all costs. I know sometimes things happen and sometimes other mistakes are harder to avoid. There's always going to be something that happens in the studio. But the ultimate goal, have fun, be creative, record something, make music, enjoy yourself. That's the goal. We'll catch you guys on the next one. And I just said it a few seconds ago. Go record something. See ya.